Behind the sacred story of Nicholas Ray's biblical epic lies a treasure trove of Hollywood chaos. Jesus and John the Baptist pushing a broken-down car in full costume, a crucifixion reshot because audiences were offended by chest hair, and Orson Welles demanding extra money just to have his name in the credits. From Franco's army playing Roman soldiers to Ray Bradbury secretly writing the narration, this reverent film was born from decidedly irreverent circumstances. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about King of Kings. Fact 1. Car trouble in Christ costumes. Picture the Son of God and his most famous prophet stranded on a Spanish roadside, pushing a broken-down car in full biblical regalia. That's exactly what happened during the production of King of Kings in 1961, when Jeffrey Hunter and Robert Ryan found themselves in one of Hollywood's most unexpectedly comedic moments. The incident occurred while the two actors were traveling to film the iconic Sermon on the Mount sequence, one of the movie's most important and elaborate scenes. Hunter was dressed in his complete Jesus costume, complete with flowing robes, sandals, and the distinctive reddish-blonde wig that would become his trademark look throughout the film. Ryan, meanwhile, was fully outfitted as John the Baptist, wearing the rough, weathered garments befitting the wild prophet of the wilderness. Their car suddenly broke down on the way to the location shoot, leaving the two biblical figures in quite a predicament. With filming schedules tight and hundreds of extras already assembled at the shooting location, there was no time to wait for a tow truck or mechanic. The solution was as practical as it was absurd. Hunter and Ryan had to get out and physically push their vehicle to get the engine started again. Imagine the sight of Jesus Christ and John the Baptist, in full costume and character makeup, working together to push a modern automobile along a Spanish road. The irony wasn't lost on the crew members who witnessed this unlikely scene, though it's unclear whether any photographs were taken of this behind-the-scenes moment. The incident perfectly captures the often chaotic and unpredictable nature of film production, where even the most sacred stories can be interrupted by the most mundane problems. Despite this automotive setback, both actors made it to the location in time, and the Sermon on the Mount sequence was filmed successfully with thousands of extras spread across the Spanish countryside, becoming one of the most memorable scenes in the entire movie. Fact 2. The hairy Jesus scandal. One of the most unexpected controversies in King of Kings came down to something as simple as chest hair, forcing the production team to reshoot one of the film's most crucial scenes. When preview audiences first saw Jeffrey Hunter's crucifixion sequence, they were shocked and offended not by the violence or religious implications, but by the fact that Jesus had visible body hair on his chest. The problem arose from a basic continuity issue that nobody had anticipated during the original filming. Hunter had been fitted with an artificial reddish-blonde wig and fake beard to create his Christ-like appearance, but the makeup department hadn't considered what would happen when the actor's natural dark body hair became visible during the crucifixion scene. When Hunter's robes were removed and he was placed on the cross, his natural chest hair was clearly visible and didn't match the color of his wig at all. The mismatch created a jarring visual effect that immediately caught the attention of test audiences, who found it distracting and inappropriate for their image of Jesus Christ. The studio executives realized they had a serious problem on their hands when preview screenings generated negative feedback specifically about this detail. In the early 1960s, audiences had very specific expectations about how biblical figures should look on screen, and any inconsistency could undermine the film's credibility and box office potential. The solution was both expensive and embarrassing for everyone involved. The entire crucifixion sequence had to be reshot from scratch, with Hunter required to shave all of his body hair before filming began again. This wasn't just a quick touch-up either, as the crucifixion was one of the most technically complex and emotionally demanding scenes in the entire movie, involving elaborate set pieces, multiple camera angles, and dozens of crew members. The reshoot delayed the production schedule and added significant costs to an already expensive production, but the studio considered it absolutely necessary to maintain the film's religious authenticity and avoid offending Christian audiences who made up the primary target demographic for biblical epics. Fact 3. Ray Bradbury's secret scripture. Hidden behind the majestic voice of Orson Welles delivering biblical narration throughout King of Kings was an unexpected ghostwriter. Ray Bradbury, the legendary science fiction author best known for Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles. Bradbury wrote every word of Welles's powerful commentary that guides viewers through the story of Jesus Christ, yet his name appears nowhere in the film's credits. The unusual collaboration came about when MGM Studios found themselves with a completed biblical epic but no proper ending or connecting narration to tie the disparate scenes together. Bradbury happened to be working at the studio in 1960 on a screenplay adaptation of the Martian Chronicles when producers approached him with their problem. They needed someone who could write narration that would feel both biblically authentic and cinematically compelling. Bradbury later joked about his contribution to the film, saying he had given the movie its gospel according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Ray. This humorous reference highlighted how his science fiction sensibilities had been applied to one of Christianity's most sacred stories. The writer was particularly proud of creating a poetic ending sequence where the resurrected Jesus commissions his disciples to spread his message to the ends of the world. However, Bradbury's involvement remained completely uncredited due to Hollywood politics and union complications. The original screenwriter didn't want Bradbury to receive any credit for his contributions, even though the narration was essential to the film's structure and emotional impact. Additionally, Bradbury wasn't technically hired as a screenwriter, but rather as a script doctor brought in to solve specific problems. The irony wasn't lost on Bradbury that his words about the life of Christ were being delivered by Welles, whose distinctive voice had once terrified America during the famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938. Years later, Bradbury would work with Welles again on other projects. But King of Kings represented their most successful collaboration, even if it remained largely invisible to the public. Fact 4. Orson Welles' name ransom. Orson Welles pulled off one of Hollywood's most audacious credit negotiations during the production of King of Kings, essentially holding his own name hostage for additional payment. The legendary actor and director agreed to provide the film's narration for $2,500, but when it came time to finalize the credits, he made an unexpected demand that left studio executives stunned. Welles informed MGM that if they wanted to use his famous name in the film's credits, they would need to pay him an additional $2,500 on top of his original fee. This wasn't a case of renegotiating his contract or asking for more money up front, but rather a separate charge specifically for the privilege of listing Orson Welles in the opening or closing credits of the movie. The studio executives were caught completely off guard by this unusual request, as most actors considered screen credit to be a standard part of their compensation and professional recognition. For Welles, however, his name had become such a valuable brand that he treated it as a separate commodity that could be licensed independently from his actual performance work. MGM ultimately decided that paying an extra $2,500 just for a credit line was too expensive, especially since audiences would immediately recognize Welles' distinctive voice whether his name appeared on screen or not. The studio chose to save the money and leave him completely uncredited, making King of Kings one of the few major Hollywood productions where Welles contributed significantly but received no official recognition. This decision created a peculiar situation where one of cinema's most recognizable voices guides viewers through the entire biblical epic. Yet moviegoers had to rely on their own knowledge to identify the narrator. Welles seemed satisfied with this arrangement, having received his full payment for the actual work while proving his point about the commercial value of his celebrity name. The incident perfectly captured Welles' complicated relationship with Hollywood studios and his shrewd understanding of his own market value in the entertainment industry. Fact 5. John Ford's Jesus recommendation. The casting of Jeffrey Hunter as Jesus Christ in King of Kings came about through an unexpected recommendation from one of Hollywood's most legendary directors, John Ford, who had just finished working with Hunter on the classic Western film The Searchers in 1956. When director Nicholas Ray was struggling to find the right actor to portray Christ, Ford stepped in with a suggestion that would change Hunter's career forever. Ford had been impressed with Hunter's performance in The Searchers, where the young actor held his own alongside John Wayne in one of cinema's greatest westerns. Hunter played Ethan Edwards' nephew, Martin Pauly, a role that required both physical presence and emotional depth as he searched for his kidnapped cousin across the American frontier. Ford recognized something special in Hunter's screen presence and believed those same qualities would translate perfectly to a biblical epic. The recommendation carried enormous weight because Ford was already established as one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers, known for his ability to spot and develop talent. When Ford suggested Hunter to Nicholas Ray, it wasn't just a casual mention but a serious endorsement from someone whose opinion mattered throughout the industry. Ray was already familiar with Hunter's work, having directed him previously in The True Story of Jesse James in 1957, so Ford's recommendation confirmed what Ray had already suspected about the actor's potential. The combination of Ford's endorsement and Ray's previous positive experience with Hunter made the casting decision much easier for producer Samuel Bronston and the studio executives. Interestingly, Hunter had just completed filming Sergeant Rutledge, which would be his third and final collaboration with John Ford. This meant that Ford's recommendation for King of Kings came at a time when he had extensive recent experience working with Hunter and could speak confidently about the actor's abilities and professionalism. The connection between these two very different films, a Western and a biblical epic, demonstrates how Hollywood's tight-knit community of directors often influenced each other's casting decisions through personal relationships and mutual respect. Fact 6. Franco's military movie deal. One of the most politically unusual aspects of King of Kings production involved a direct collaboration between Hollywood and Spanish dictator Francisco Franco, who provided thousands of his own military soldiers to serve as Roman legion extras in the biblical epic. This arrangement created one of the rare instances where a major American film studio worked directly with a fascist government to create a movie about Jesus Christ. Producer Samuel Bronston had established his production company in Spain specifically to take advantage of the country's lower costs and cooperative government policies toward foreign filmmakers. Franco's regime was eager to attract international productions that would bring foreign currency into Spain and showcase the country's landscapes to global audiences, making them unusually accommodating to Hollywood's needs. The Spanish military's participation went far beyond simply lending a few soldiers for background scenes. Franco's army provided massive numbers of uniformed troops who were trained to march in formation and handle weapons, making them perfect for portraying the disciplined Roman legions that conquered Jerusalem and maintained order throughout Judea. These weren't amateur extras hired off the street, but actual professional soldiers who could convincingly portray an occupying military force. The arrangement benefited both sides significantly, as Bronston gained access to thousands of extras at a fraction of what it would have cost to hire civilians and train them to march and fight like soldiers. Meanwhile, Franco's government received payment for the military's services and gained international prestige from hosting a major Hollywood production. This collaboration meant that scenes depicting Roman oppression of the Jewish people were actually being performed by soldiers serving under a real-world dictator, creating an unintentional historical parallel that few viewers would have recognized at the time. The Spanish soldiers appeared in multiple key sequences throughout the film, including the conquest of Jerusalem, various crowd control scenes, and the crucifixion sequence itself. Franco's cooperation extended beyond just providing extras, as his government also allowed filming at historic Spanish locations and provided logistical support that made the ambitious production possible. Fact 7. The I Was a Teenage Jesus mockery. Hollywood critics and industry insiders quickly coined a mocking nickname for King of Kings that would follow the film for decades. I Was a Teenage Jesus, a sarcastic reference to the popular 1957 horror movie I Was a Teenage Werewolf, starring Michael Landon. This cruel joke emerged because Jeffrey Hunter's youthful, clean-cut appearance seemed more suited to playing a teen heartthrob than the Son of God. The nickname was particularly unfair because Hunter was actually 33 years old when he filmed King of Kings, which was historically accurate for Jesus Christ at the time of his crucifixion, according to biblical scholars. However, Hunter's naturally handsome features, piercing blue eyes, and perfectly styled hair made him look much younger than his actual age, especially when compared to the more weathered, mature actors who had previously portrayed biblical figures in Hollywood epics. The joke gained traction partly because director Nicholas Ray was already famous for Rebel Without a Cause, the ultimate teenage rebellion movie starring James Dean. Critics found it amusing that the same director who had captured the angst of 1950s youth culture was now attempting to tell the story of Christianity's most sacred figure with what appeared to be another young, attractive leading man. The I Was a Teenage Werewolf reference was particularly cutting because that film represented everything that serious biblical epics were trying to avoid: cheap thrills, youth-oriented marketing, and sensational storytelling designed to appeal to drive-in movie audiences. By comparing King of Kings to a B-grade monster movie, critics were suggesting that casting Hunter had turned a reverent religious story into just another piece of teen-focused entertainment. The nickname stuck so persistently that it appeared in film reference books and movie guides for years afterward, often overshadowing more thoughtful discussions of the film's actual merits. Even today, the phrase, "I was a teenage Jesus," is still used by film historians and critics when discussing King of Kings, demonstrating how a clever bit of Hollywood snark can become permanently attached to a movie's legacy. Fact 8. Welles's apostolic pronunciation. Orson Welles made a deliberate and unusual pronunciation choice while recording the narration for King of Kings that gave the entire film a distinctive biblical atmosphere. He insisted on pronouncing the word apostles with a hard T sound, saying apostols instead of the more common apostles that most English speakers use. This seemingly small decision created a formal, ancient quality to his delivery that made the narration sound more ceremonial and reverent. The traditional pronunciation of apostles in modern English typically treats the T as silent or very soft, similar to how we say castle or whistle without emphasizing the T sound. However, Welles chose to pronounce every letter clearly and distinctly, which was closer to how the word might have been spoken in earlier centuries or in more formal religious contexts. This pronunciation choice wasn't accidental or a mistake on Welles's part, but rather a conscious artistic decision that reflected his deep understanding of how vocal delivery could enhance the storytelling experience. Welles had extensive experience in radio drama and theater, where precise diction and unusual vocal choices could create specific moods and transport audiences to different times and places. The hard pronunciation appeared throughout the film whenever Welles referred to Jesus' 12 disciples, which happened frequently since they played such important roles in the biblical narrative. Each time viewers heard apostols, instead of the familiar modern pronunciation, it reminded them that they were hearing about events from a distant, sacred past rather than contemporary stories. Welles's choice also demonstrated his meticulous attention to detail and his belief that every element of a performance, no matter how small, could contribute to the overall artistic impact. His distinctive pronunciation became one of the most memorable aspects of the film's narration, helping to establish the epic, timeless quality that the producers wanted to achieve. The decision perfectly captured Welles' approach to acting and voice work, where he never simply read lines but instead made deliberate choices about how each word should sound to serve the story's larger purposes. Fact 9. Power lines in the desert. One of the most glaring continuity errors in King of Kings occurs during the pivotal temptation of Christ sequence, where two modern electrical power poles are clearly visible in the background of what should be the ancient wilderness of Judea. This accidental anachronism appears in the wide shots of the desert canyon where Jesus faces Satan after 40 days of fasting, creating a jarring reminder that viewers are watching a 20th century film production rather than events from 2,000 years ago. The temptation scene was filmed in the rugged Spanish countryside, specifically in the Rambla de la Nujar region of Almeria, which was chosen because its barren, rocky landscape closely resembled the harsh desert terrain of the Middle East. The location scouts and director Nicholas Ray had found what appeared to be the perfect isolated setting for this crucial biblical moment, where Jesus confronts the devil and rejects worldly temptations. However, during the filming process, nobody noticed that modern power lines were running through the supposedly pristine ancient landscape. The electrical poles appear in at least 2 different shots during the sequence, standing prominently in the upper right portion of the frame during long shots that were meant to emphasize the vast, empty wilderness where Jesus struggled with spiritual challenges. This oversight is particularly ironic given that the temptation scene represents one of Christianity's most spiritually significant moments, where Jesus demonstrates his divine nature by refusing Satan's offers of earthly power and material wealth. The presence of 20th century electrical infrastructure in these shots creates an unintentional visual contradiction that undermines the timeless, sacred atmosphere the filmmakers were trying to establish. The power lines remained in the final cut of the film, suggesting that either the editing team failed to notice them during post-production or decided that the cost of reshooting the entire sequence would be too expensive. The mistake has since become a favorite discovery among eagle-eyed viewers and film scholars who enjoy spotting continuity errors in classic Hollywood productions. Fact 10. The temple that wouldn't stay up. Mother Nature proved to be one of the most destructive forces working against the production of King of Kings, when a powerful windstorm completely demolished the massive Temple of Jerusalem set at the Sevilla Studios near Madrid, forcing the construction crew to start over from the very beginning. This wasn't just a minor setback involving a few broken props, but rather the total destruction of one of the film's most important and expensive sets. The temple set was designed to be one of the centerpieces of the entire production, serving as the location for several crucial scenes, including Jesus cleansing the Temple of Money Changers and various confrontations with religious authorities. The construction team had spent weeks building an elaborate recreation of the ancient temple complex, complete with towering columns, ornate decorations, and massive stone facades that were meant to convey the grandeur and sacred importance of Judaism's holiest site. However, the Spanish weather had other plans for the ambitious construction project. A severe windstorm swept through the area during the building process, generating winds powerful enough to knock down the entire structure like a house of cards. When producer Samuel Bronston arrived at the studio the morning after the storm, he found nothing but scattered debris where the magnificent temple had been taking shape. Rather than attempting to salvage any of the damaged materials or trying to rebuild around what remained, Bronston made the expensive decision to completely clear the site and start construction all over again. This meant that all the time, money, and effort that had gone into the original temple construction was completely lost, adding significant delays and costs to an already ambitious production schedule. The rebuilding process took a full 3 months to complete, during which other scenes had to be filmed while the construction crews worked around the clock to recreate the temple complex. The new version was built with additional reinforcements and weather-resistant materials to prevent another catastrophic collapse, ensuring that the temple would survive long enough to serve its important role in telling the story of Jesus Christ. Fact 11. Grace Kelly's holy rejection. Grace Kelly, one of Hollywood's most elegant and beloved stars, was originally offered the sacred role of Mary, the mother of Jesus, in King of Kings, but ultimately declined the opportunity, leading to one of the most significant casting changes in the film's development. Kelly's rejection meant that producer Samuel Bronston had to find another actress capable of bringing both dignity and emotional depth to Christianity's most revered maternal figure. At the time the offer was made in May 1960, Kelly was at the height of her Hollywood career, having won an Academy Award for The Country Girl and starred in classic films like Rear Window and To Catch a Thief under the direction of Alfred Hitchcock. Her reputation for portraying sophisticated, graceful characters made her seem like a natural choice for the Virgin Mary, and her star power would have brought considerable prestige to the biblical epic. However, Kelly had already begun transitioning away from her Hollywood career following her marriage to Prince Rainier of Monaco in 1956. By 1960, she was focused on her duties as Princess Grace and was increasingly selective about film projects, ultimately choosing to decline most acting offers to concentrate on her royal responsibilities and growing family. Kelly's decision opened the door for Irish actress Siobhan McKenna, a distinguished theater performer who brought a completely different energy to the role. McKenna was known for her powerful stage presence and her ability to convey deep emotional complexity, qualities that proved essential for portraying a mother watching her son's divine mission unfold toward its tragic conclusion. The casting change actually worked in the film's favor, as McKenna's more theatrical background and natural red hair gave Mary a distinctive appearance that stood out from the typical Hollywood portrayal of biblical women. Her performance brought an earthy, maternal warmth to the character that might have been different if the more polished and aristocratic Kelly had taken the role. The contrast between what might have been and what actually happened demonstrates how individual career decisions can significantly alter the final character of major film productions. Fact 12. Richard Burton's billing battle. Richard Burton, one of Britain's most celebrated stage and screen actors, was originally cast to play the corrupt King Herod Antipas in King of Kings, but dramatically quit the production over a dispute about billing that revealed the complex ego dynamics of Hollywood stardom. Burton's departure forced the filmmakers to scramble for a replacement and demonstrated how questions of screen credit could derail even major biblical epics. The casting of Burton initially seemed like a perfect match for the role of Herod Antipas, the puppet ruler who ordered the execution of John the Baptist and later interrogated Jesus during his trial. Burton's commanding presence and rich Welsh voice would have brought tremendous gravitas to the character, and his growing international reputation following stage successes in London and New York made him an attractive addition to the cast. However, Burton's negotiations with producer Samuel Bronston hit a major snag when the actor demanded top billing in the film's credits. This created an impossible situation for the production team because Jeffrey Hunter had already been cast as Jesus Christ, making him the undisputed star and leading man of the entire movie. Giving Burton top billing would have meant placing a supporting character actor above the actor portraying the central figure of Christianity. Burton's demand wasn't entirely unreasonable from his perspective, as he was already a more established and critically acclaimed actor than Hunter, with extensive theater credentials and several successful films to his credit. In the rigid hierarchy of Hollywood billing, Burton likely felt that his superior reputation and experience entitled him to the most prominent credit position. When Bronston and the studio executives refused to grant Burton top billing, The proud Welsh actor chose to walk away from the project entirely rather than accept what he viewed as a secondary position. This decision cost Burton what could have been a memorable role in a major Hollywood epic and forced the production to find a replacement actor who was willing to accept appropriate supporting billing. The role eventually went to Frank Thring, who brought his own theatrical intensity to the part of Herod Antipas. Fact 13. The Blue-Eyed Messiah controversy. Producer Samuel Bronston made a deliberately controversial casting decision when he chose Jeffrey Hunter specifically for his piercing blue eyes, openly admitting that visual impact was more important than historical accuracy in his portrayal of Jesus Christ. Bronston famously explained his choice by stating, "I really chose him for his eyes. It was important that the man playing Christ have memorable eyes," completely acknowledging that he was prioritizing cinematic effect over authentic Middle Eastern appearance. This casting philosophy created immediate controversy among religious scholars and film critics who pointed out that a first-century Jewish carpenter from Nazareth would almost certainly have had brown eyes, dark hair, and olive-toned skin typical of people from that region and time period. Hunter's bright blue eyes, fair complexion, and light brown hair made him look more like a Scandinavian or Northern European than someone from ancient Palestine. The decision reflected Hollywood's long-standing tradition of casting white European actors in biblical roles, regardless of historical accuracy. During the 1960s, major studios routinely prioritized star appeal and conventional Western beauty standards over authentic ethnic representation, even in films dealing with Middle Eastern or biblical subjects. Bronston's candid admission about choosing Hunter for his eyes revealed the calculated nature of this casting choice. The producer understood that Hunter's striking blue eyes would photograph beautifully in close-ups and create a memorable visual impression that would help audiences connect emotionally with the character, even if it meant sacrificing historical authenticity. The controversy intensified because the film was marketed as a serious, reverent treatment of the Jesus story, rather than a fantasy or artistic interpretation. Many viewers expected at least some attempt at historical accuracy in the physical portrayal of Christ, making Hunter's obviously European features particularly jarring for audiences familiar with biblical scholarship. Despite the criticism, Bronston never expressed any regret about his casting decision, maintaining that the emotional and spiritual impact of Hunter's performance was more important than strict adherence to historical appearance. The blue eyes became one of the film's most distinctive and debated visual elements. Fact 14. The oil for movies scheme. Producer Samuel Bronston engineered one of Hollywood's most creative financing arrangements by essentially becoming an international oil broker, selling DuPont petroleum products to Spain and then converting the profits into movie production funds that couldn't leave the country. This elaborate financial scheme solved a major problem for both American corporations and Spanish filmmakers, while creating the funding necessary to produce King of Kings. The arrangement emerged from Spain's strict currency controls during the Franco era, which prevented foreign companies from taking their Spanish profits out of the country in American dollars. Several major American corporations, including DuPont, had significant amounts of money trapped in Spain that could only be spent locally, creating a frustrating situation where valuable assets couldn't be accessed for use elsewhere. Bronston recognized this situation as a unique business opportunity and positioned himself as the solution to everyone's problem. He negotiated deals to sell DuPont oil and other petroleum products to Spanish buyers, generating substantial peseta profits that legally belonged to DuPont but couldn't be converted to dollars or removed from Spain. Instead of letting this money sit idle in Spanish banks, Bronston convinced DuPont to invest their trapped pesetas in his film productions, effectively turning frozen corporate assets into movie financing. This arrangement allowed DuPont to put their Spanish profits to productive use, while giving Bronston access to millions of pesetas that he could spend on sets, costumes, equipment, and the thousands of Spanish crew members and extras needed for his biblical epic. The scheme was perfectly legal and beneficial to all parties involved, as DuPont recovered value from their otherwise useless Spanish assets. Spain benefited from increased foreign investment and employment, and Bronston gained the substantial funding necessary to create lavish period productions that would have been impossible to finance through traditional Hollywood channels. This oil for movies arrangement became the foundation for several of Bronston's major Spanish productions, including not only King of Kings, but also the epic films El Cid and The Fall of the Roman Empire. Fact 15. The papal approval process. Producer Samuel Bronston took the extraordinary step of traveling to Vatican City in March 1960 to personally meet with Pope John XXIII and secure official papal approval for the King of Kings script, creating a unique endorsement that he would later use as a powerful marketing tool for international distribution. This meeting represented one of the rare instances where a Hollywood producer sought direct blessing from the Catholic Church's highest authority before filming a biblical epic. Bronston understood that gaining papal approval would provide enormous credibility for his film project, especially in Catholic countries where religious authenticity was crucial for box office success. The meeting with Pope John XXIII wasn't just a courtesy call, but rather a calculated business strategy designed to give King of Kings an official stamp of religious legitimacy that competing biblical films couldn't claim. The Vatican meeting required careful preparation and diplomatic protocols, as Bronston needed to present the script in a way that demonstrated respect for Catholic doctrine and biblical accuracy. The producer had already hired several biblical scholars and theologians to review the screenplay, including playwright Diego Fabri and theology professor George Kilpatrick, ensuring that the story adhered closely to gospel accounts and traditional Christian interpretations. Pope John XXIII's approval of the script gave Bronston a powerful marketing advantage that he exploited throughout the film's international promotion campaign. The papal endorsement became a central selling point for distributors in Catholic nations, where the Pope's blessing carried significant weight with both religious authorities and general audiences. This perceived Vatican endorsement helped Bronston secure distribution deals in major Catholic markets across Europe and Latin America, where religious films needed official church approval to avoid boycotts or censorship. The papal meeting also generated valuable publicity for the production, as newspapers around the world reported on the unusual collaboration between Hollywood and the Vatican. Bronston's strategy of seeking papal approval became a template that other producers would attempt to follow, though few managed to secure such high-level Vatican endorsement for their biblical productions.